We must begin by discussing the awful events in Manchester yesterday, the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue in Crumpsall. 2 men were killed. Police have shared their identities this morning. They are 53-year-old Adrian Daulby and 66-year-old Melvin Cravitz. 3 other men were injured and remain in a serious condition in hospital. One suffered a stab wound, one was hit when the suspect drove a car towards the synagogue, and one is thought to have been injured as officers stopped the attacker. A witness filmed police on the scene. We won't show you all of this. It's extremely graphic. The attacker was shot dead just 7 minutes after they arrived. He'd been wearing a suspected bomb. The suspect has now been named as a 35-year-old called Jihad, surnamed al-Shamie, and he's thought to have been a British citizen of Syrian descent. There he is. We'll hear more about him shortly. James, you're a member of the Jewish community. This is the deadliest attack on a British synagogue. What are your thoughts this morning?
Very good morning, Jeremy, and it's almost sad to be joining you on an occasion like this because although I think the Jewish community in the UK has warned that this could be something that could happen, you don't expect it to happen. And all the words that people have said about how horrific it is, the sympathies that we have for the families and all of that is so important. But the palpable concern that the whole Jewish community has in the United Kingdom is now laid bare for us to see. It's not just people talking, it is genuine, it is there, we have to do something about it. And I think the words that politicians have given to the rise in anti-Semitism are just words. They haven't taken the necessary action to make sure that this is something that is both understood and then tackled at the very root of our society. So I think it is shock and horror, sadness, but also resilience to this terrible threat which still exists in our country and on our streets. And
Angie, what do you think has put us in this position?
Firstly, I want to express my grief. I stand with the Jewish community in this really difficult time and their solidarity. We are in a place of deep unrest, uncertainty. We are divided at the moment as a country. We knew the moment post the Hamas attacks there would be heightened threat levels. Synagogues did take action at that point in time where they did increase their own security because this was a real threat. I think what is sad is that most people say this was almost inevitable in some ways. One of the things that is coming out for me is that there has been some assurance in the speed at which police responded. The effect of Martin's Law post the Manchester attacks, which were only enforced, I believe, this year, which means that if you're an establishment of high capacity, of faith, that you have a plan in place if something like this happens. So the one thing I would say is there should not be one life lost in this terror attack. But I believe that we prevented further. We shouldn't be where we are today. I'm really concerned and nervous as to how the political narrative will go on this. Please do not use this as a push for your own agenda. Please unite together and let's face this head on.
Well, it's gone in a number of directions. Of course, people talk about Gaza, but they also talk about how the hell this man who became a terrorist was allowed into the country. So it goes into a migration story, doesn't it? And his name was Jihad, which, you know, immediately makes you think, is there an agenda or something? I don't know. Where do you go with it, Albie?
I'm devastated and absolutely heartbroken at the news. My thoughts and prayers are very much with the families of those affected and the entire Jewish community. I was shocked when I heard about this terrorist attack yesterday. And I think what a lot of people don't realise is that during Yom Kippur, a lot of Jewish people actually do a complete digital detox. So I was seeing last night Jewish friends of mine who were coming online for the first time and actually just hearing about it. And this was like at 10 o'clock in the evening. So expressing this shock and horror on what is the equivalent of Christmas or Easter, kind of all wrapped up in one. A lot of people saying things like, don't let this divide us. But I quite like to be divided from people who think it's appropriate to attack a synagogue on Yom Kippur.
Keir Starmer cut his trip to Copenhagen short yesterday and flew back for an emergency Cobra meeting. He's promised to protect Jewish communities.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews. And while this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with, we must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again. And Britain must defeat it once again.
Let's speak to 5 News reporter Bradley Harris, who's outside the home where Jihad al-Shamie lived. What do we know, Bradley, about the suspect?
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, well, when counter-terrorism detectives confirmed the name of Jihad al-Shamie, they also confirmed that he was a 35-year-old British man of Syrian descent. It's understood he lived on this street in Prestwich. We're in North Manchester. We are about 2 miles away from the scene of that horrific attack. He arrived in the UK as a small child. He was granted British citizenship in 2006. There's no record of him being referred to the anti-extremism programme Prevent. Al-Shamie's name hasn't appeared, we're told, in initial police searches of police, nor does he show up on security service counter-terrorism records, and he is not thought to have been under current investigation either. So, you know, lots of questions. What will happen next with this investigation and with the offender? Well, this has been designated a terrorist offence, as we know. Further checks are underway. In fact, they'll be happening right now as we speak to see if the offender appears anywhere in police records or in other investigations. Greater Manchester Police say 3 other suspects have been arrested on suspicion of commission, preparation and instigation of acts of terrorism. They are 2 men in their 30s and a woman in her 60s. Extra police will be deployed today across the city of Manchester. I think it wouldn't be surprising, really, Jeremy, to be walking around the area, certainly in Prestwich and in North Manchester, walking past Jewish schools and synagogues and seeing police officers outside them. We certainly saw that yesterday. And in fact, Greater Manchester Police have said in a statement that additional resources will provide a high visibility presence in North Manchester, in Bury and in Salford, within Jewish communities and around synagogues. They said, we are conscious of the significance of Fridays and Saturdays in the Jewish faith, and we'll be doing everything we can to help communities. Obviously, we are 24 hours on now since that horrific attack at that synagogue. This, one of the largest Jewish communities outside of London, 25,000 people in all, still in shock and in fear, Jeremy, for their safety.
I was reading about Jihad's dad, Bradley, and I don't know whether this has been sort of firmed up yet, but apparently he was a trauma surgeon who worked for charities, non-governmental organisations in war zones. Is that right?
Yeah, of course, you're talking about NGOs there. Now, this is all reported. We don't have any confirmation of that. It's still really reported and understood that this is where Jihad al-Shamie lived. We still don't have any confirmation of that from police. We've actually just recently had a changeover of police officers here this morning. Still police tape up as they continue their investigations. But of course, that will be a question that the police will be asking, looking at the wider family and really asking the question why anyone would want to carry out an attack as horrific as this.
Thank you very much indeed, Bradley Harris, 5 News. James Max, sometimes you look into the person's background, they don't have any associates, and they don't have any previous history of anything terror-related at all. And then you find it completely baffling, don't you, that they've just suddenly woken up one morning and decided to do this?
I think you're absolutely right, Jeremy. To understand why anybody would carry out such an attack, regardless of the details of this, are unfathomable to the vast majority of the population. However, the environment in which we now have, that there are certain, whether it's protests or things being said or people not taking the necessary action, does give the environment that allows those perhaps very small number of people to believe or to think that what they're doing is either what they must do or the right thing, or however it may be interpreted. And that is what we have to deal with. That to talk about extra security, I mean, you wouldn't talk about having armed police outside a church because you were going to a carol service or a concert. You wouldn't talk about looking after the community in that sort of way, or outside your Church of England primary school or secondary school to have some kind of armed guard. You'd think that the state had gone mad if that was the case. Yet for the Jewish community, this has been ongoing for many, many years, and it has become worse. And yet nothing has been done about it. So it's the environment in which protests, where people can say and push for the things that many of us perhaps haven't understood the relevance of what they've been flag waving, shouting about, or screaming about. And then the conflation of what's been happening in the Middle East and the bringing of that, particularly on our city streets and centres, and the inability or unwillingness to tackle the elements within those marches that are driven by those nasty and horrific campaigns which are taking place on our shores. We've got some very difficult conversations that we have to have right at the centre of communities up and down this country. Right. And it does go to the heart of immigration. It does go to the heart of society. It does go to the heart of religious belief. And it does go to the heart of what is right and what is wrong.
Thank you very much. Stay with us, James, and we'll discuss it more. And we want to hear from you. I'm going to speak to Alex in London. Hello, Alex.
Hi, thanks for having me on. So I'm part of the Jewish community in London, and the amount of Jews who don't feel that this country is safe for us, record numbers are leaving to live in Israel, the only Jewish state. That is why it's so important, and that's why we feel so deeply about what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. We've had these attacks throughout all our history, going back to York with Richard the Lionheart, the Spanish Inquisition, obviously what happened with the Holocaust. This is normal, and this is being propagated by the UK government and the mainstream media. The parroting of the word genocide, where, for example, after 9/11, the US went into Iraq, killed 400,000 people compared to 20,000 people. No one called that a genocide. When Israel did a just war, it's a genocide.
Oh, hang on. But I thought the point about this is that actually it's wrong for anyone to think that a Jewish person living in Britain necessarily supports what the state of Israel is doing or even thinks about it. So you don't need to run through that argument this morning, but you can if you want.
It is because people, obviously, if the state of Israel consider it's a Jewish state and it's a Jewish homeland, people don't differentiate between when they go Israel. As I said, we feel very deeply about a Jewish homeland because of what's gone on in the past. So what goes on in the Middle East does affect us over here.
And you think this? Well, it's probably best that you say this than I do. But you think this flows from Gaza, do you?
It's 100%. It's the parroting from the government of recognising a Palestinian state and rewarding terrorism without any conditions on Hamas. It's the promotion from the mainstream media here of the words such as genocide, such as there being famine, and UN statistics saying 85% of the food is stolen from Hamas. When the UK went to war in Iraq, Afghanistan, were we ever concerned about us feeding them? But all it is Israel, we have to go and feed them. And I'm saying this is the parroting of these figures from the mainstream media, from the government. It makes people hate the Jews because people can turn the Jews with the land of Israel. And this is how the Jewish community
but the government is saying these things. I mean, what Keir Starmer said last time Trump was over was that the British people were absolutely revolted by what they were seeing in Gaza. That's what he said. He may be right about that.
There are people, and obviously the Palestinian people who perish. It's absolute travesty, of course. But again, who's this ultimately at the fault of it? Is it out the Hamas? Why have Hamas not signed the ceasefire deal? And it's the parroting of Israel are doing wrong. It's the IDF. People relate that to the Jewish people. It's never, why can't Hamas stop the war? Why can't Hamas release the hostages? It's always that. And people then go and they blame the Jews. And we see at these marches the anti-Semitic rhetoric. We see at Glastonbury anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Okay.
And it's constant.
Thank you, Alex, very much. And it's a good point because there were marches, pro-Palestinian marches, even yesterday. And people were saying, well, of all days, they shouldn't have gone ahead. Let's talk to Graham Stringer, the senior Labour backbencher, Labour MP for the area. And Graham, I know that you know the synagogue well.
I do, and it's very upsetting. And I think after the sadness of yesterday, we all need to start thinking now about what we can do to make the Jewish community in this country, which makes an enormous contribution, what we can do to make them feel safe, because they don't feel safe. And as your previous speaker said, many of them have been predicting an event like yesterday and are thinking of moving elsewhere, not to Israel, to the United States, or wherever. And we have to do whatever we can to make them feel secure. You clearly can't make any community feel secure when anybody can use a car and a knife to attack them. But we can change the atmosphere around the debate on Gaza and about the future of the Jewish community.
I suppose it's the extent to which what is happening in Gaza feeds this kind of violence, and whether the only way to remove the threat is to settle the conflict in Gaza.
I think there are a number of points there. There's no doubt that Gaza has increased the number of attacks there are on individual Jews and the Jewish community. The Jewish Security Organization, CST, estimate there have been a 400% increase in attacks, and they've been upping their security activities. Nobody can absolutely stop attacks where you can go out and buy a car, you can buy a knife, as happened yesterday. Nobody can stop that, but you can change the atmosphere. There's no doubt things have got worse since Gaza, and I think in both middle-class dinner parties, it is now often seen as acceptable to make anti-Semitic comments, and that background needs to change. And it has changed since Gaza, because there have been horrific scenes in Gaza, but we wouldn't accept people saying the same things as I said about Jews, about black people, or about homosexuals. And we need to make sure, every one of us, that people who do that are called out, because there is actually a personal responsibility on everybody to do that.
Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Graham Stringer, Labour MP. James Max, there was an interesting comment from Graham there about that it now seems to be acceptable for middle-class people at a dinner party to suddenly be anti-Semitic in their conversation, their private conversation. Is that right?
I think it is right. Because I think some things have been talked about and a lack of understanding. And when it comes down to mainstream media, so I always worry when we talk about Hamas and we talk about organizations. So very often politicians say that the solution to all this is a two-state solution to create a Palestinian state and all that sort of thing, which we may think is marvelous. You're dealing with Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that doesn't believe that the state of Israel should exist. And when you have that kind of conversation, and then you see the flag waving and the things which are happening on our streets and the words that people are using, which either at low level indicates that the Jewish state shouldn't exist, or these people brought it upon themselves, or all of this sort of stuff. It's low level. It's not the same kind of racism that you will see perhaps towards other communities that is just as abhorrent. But it's low level. It's the kind of low level that back in the 50s, when my grandfather was starting out in work and he wanted to join his local golf club, he wasn't allowed to because he was Jewish. Did they tell him? No, but it just, the club was full. So it's low level. It's not very it's not above the radar. Is it there? Yes, it is. Do we need to tackle it? Absolutely. And people do conflate all these issues together, sometimes through either support or disagreement with what our government has either said or done, or a misunderstanding of the situation and why we are where we are. But I think if we're not very careful, we have 287,000 Jewish people in this country, and we have far more people from elsewhere who have very different views and beliefs about how the world order, if you like, should be. And we've never really integrated people into our society as to what our belief system is, particularly given what happened 70 or 80 years ago.
Thank you so much for joining us, James Max. David in Cumbria, hi.
Hi, Jeremy. I hope you're well. Right. My mum and I decided after October the 7th not to go anywhere near a synagogue. I'll go to a funeral, but I won't go to a wedding. I certainly won't go anywhere near a synagogue on High Holy Days.
Are you Jewish yourself then, David?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Is that that's not a big sacrifice for you to decide not to go near a synagogue?
Well, it is, because I Zoomed it was what happened yesterday, of course. I was Zooming the service, actually in two places, because I got two sermons, which was quite interesting. But and I got a message from my cousin, because normally on Yom Kippur we don't use any electronic devices or anything. But I got a message from my cousin. Sadly, you were right, because I've been saying this is going to happen at some point. I was actually surprised it didn't happen last year.
Do you see the narrative we were conjuring with, and it may be wrong? Hamas attack Israel appallingly. Israel fight back, and there's a whole debate about whether any element of it is justified. And then the anger of the fight back, and then the anger spills into other places like Manchester, like a synagogue, and it's all connected. But you may say it's not, David.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is connected, and I think where I disagreed with what Alex was saying earlier when he rang you was that basically you can support Israel but be really disappointed and appalled at what the Israeli government is doing. And I think that's, a pretty widespread view amongst certainly the people I talk to in the Jewish community, because I think the conflation with the Israeli government, just as you guys attack the British government and I do as well, and of whatever colour. And you can't conflate all British people are members of the Labour Party and say all Jewish people are supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Thank you. We've got to crack on, but thank you so much for calling us. I do appreciate it, David. And We'll talk more about your reaction to the terrible attack on the synagogue in Manchester, leaving 2 people dead. 0207 862 2222. See you in a moment. 0207 862 2222 is the number. We're now joined by our friend Angela Epstein, and you know this synagogue very, very well, Angela.
Yeah, I do. And apologies for the noise. You caught me while I'm travelling for work. So yes, this was my family synagogue. This was a place I spent a large part of my childhood, and also it's where I got married. So it completely resonates. It's right in the heart of the Manchester Jewish community. Yes, that's a picture from my wedding day, taken in the magnificent main area in the centre of the synagogue. And it's complete anathema to think of this place of beauty and peace and worship and family and community has been violated in this most monstrous way. And of course, people have died from within the community and the brave security guard as well.
Yeah, I was reading about obviously the security guard literally put his life on the line. And it seems that one of the people inside, maybe the rabbi, was barred the doors, which saved lives as well.
Yes, I mean, it's like I say, the contrast between what was going on and what the nefarious intent of this terrorist was is so dramatic. This was Yom Kippur, you probably heard, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The rabbi is a tremendous guy, really brings the community of that synagogue together and literally barricaded people inside. And the idea that on this day of reflection, this evil could happen. I mean, we were woken up early by the sounds of helicopters overhead, literally hovering above my house, although obviously they were covering a much wider area. But like I say, I live in the heart of the community where this synagogue is, pass it all the time. And ironically, Jeremy, the last time I was there was because one of the released hostages from the October the 7th atrocity came to address the Manchester community, and they chose this synagogue as the place for him to make the address because it's such an appropriate place. It was big, it was airy, and also because it resonates as a place where people just come together, you know, to appreciate their Judaism and to pray and to enjoy community. And this has been a complete violation. I'm absolutely devastated.
I was going to ask how it's affecting you.
I just can't get my head around it. I cannot. You know, yesterday, Yom Kippur, the streets were thronged. We're a quiet suburban area. The streets were thronged with police. People were white-faced, shot. At that time, we didn't know who the fatalities were. Even though we're a big community, we tend to all know each other. You know, it's 3 degrees of separation, not 6. And inevitably, everybody knew somebody there at that synagogue. My sister almost went yesterday. I was actually choosing to go to a different synagogue just nearby. But yeah, I always think of the Heaton Park Synagogue as a place of warm nostalgia, family, home. I used to sit there with my late mum. I've got so many, I'm sort of tearing up a bit now. I used to sit there with my mum in the upper pews. And this idea that somebody was plotting just close to where I live, where we all live, and wanted to do something so incredibly evil. It is just, I just can't get my head around it.
Oh, thoughts with you, my friend. And thanks so much for coming on the show on a difficult day. Thank you, Angela. Take care. Francis in Staffordshire, hi.
Good morning.
Well, what do you make of this?
Well, what I think, Jeremy, I think it's a disgusting attack. And I watched afterwards the Prime Minister come on TV almost weeping in disbelief that something like this had happened, when he's allowed, for the last 12 months or more, the pro-Palestinian marches to take over our city centres, which are clearly, as well as being pro-Palestinian, which they should be, of course, they are clearly anti-Semitic at the same time.
Well, the thing that I can't work out the rights and wrongs of these marches, because there is a thought here, Francis, that if you don't let people march, they do something else. And you know, venting is how our society works. And in that respect, they're healthy.
Well, of course, but when the pro-Palestinian march turns into an anti-Semitic march, then the police should step in and stop it.
And do you think that's happened? Do you think it has?
I know yesterday, obviously, it felt hard timing to have the protests. Obviously, they were around the interceptions of the fleet of ships to Gaza. However, we'd only just had those attacks. The protests are there for people, freedom of speech, to voice their concerns. I think when you hear some of the commentary on what some of the protesters said yesterday, shortly after the attacks, I think can fuel fire. And I think that's what they're alluding to.
What do you think?
I mean, I often defend the pro-Palestine protests on free speech grounds, but I do not understand why you would hold a pro-Palestine protest the day that a terrorist attack had happened on the Jewish community on Yom Kippur. I feel like that really opened my eyes, because I just don't understand why you would organise a protest on that day, why you wouldn't move it out of respect, why you would attend. I feel strongly about the Palestine issue. I want to see a two-state solution. I think Israel's response to October 7th has been disproportionate. I would not have gone to a protest yesterday out of respect for the Jewish community.
We'll keep talking after the break. And 0207 862 2222 is the number. Julie is in Manchester. Hi, Julie.
Hello, Jeremy.
What are you thinking today?
Oh, well, yesterday when my husband came in from work about 5 o'clock, I only found out then. And I said, well, what's happened? He told me there'd been an attack. And he told me, and my heart sank. Because I just think they're being persecuted. And it breaks me heart, because everybody's not the same. My heart goes out to them Jews. And it does. And my husband was upset. I'm born and bred in this country, and I love everybody, but what they're doing is wrong. And my heart goes out to them all, and I just want to let you know, not everybody is the same. People feel for them when they do.
Yeah, I hear you completely. That's very, very heartfelt and very moving to hear, Julie, that you're so sympathetic. And who wouldn't be? It's a terrible thing that's happened.
It's to be done.
They don't? They're not sympathetic?
No, I am, but something needs to be done. It needs stopping.
Julie, what do you think needs to be done? What's the course of action now?
What I would do, and I know Keir Starmer has said it about all these protests, I would stop it straight away. I would round them all up, put them in a van, and I'd put them on the plane and send them out of their country.
Well,
that's what I would do.
Yeah, but some of the people on those protests are, you know, sons of people who were living in Britain, sons and daughters 100 years ago. It's not all recently arrived migrants, Julie, who are on those protests.
No, I know.
And
but
you need
when
a big
you see
van.
them, it makes you mad. Because if our own protest, you've no freedom of speech, they're saying.
Okay, thank you, Julie. You know what? That maybe this where this story goes is to these Palestinian marches, the pro-Palestinian marches, and for someone to say this now can't be allowed. It's a hard argument to make.
Well, do you know what we're trying to control freedom of? We're trying to putting boundaries around this freedom of speech. Like, has it gone too far? Does it need to look different now? I think a lot of questions are coming up. It seems like we're nurturing extremist thinking in different ways. For me, the internet is a very dark place to bring very dark people together.
You're so right.
And that's going to nurture attacks like this that may have not been possible, thought of, or able to happen before. I mean, there's a dark side to the internet, and it's bringing out extremist thinking. That's the problem here. Like, what does freedom of speech look like now?
Yeah, Melanie in Manchester. Hi.
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, panel.
Sad day for your city.
I know. It's, you know what? It's not even that it's just in Manchester. I don't have a faith myself, but this is to do this to the Jewish community in this country. They're not making the decisions. They're not the terrorists. They're just people going along there every day. And there's been so much. I don't know many Jewish people, but I felt the build-up of the hate for them.
Really? How do you see that?
Yeah. Just through the news and through the media, through social media, it's there. You know, you've only got to go on that bloody X thing. Sorry,
don't do it. It's awful.
See it. It's shocking. And if this had happened, say, for a Christian, it would be on Christmas Day. Imagine that happening.
Yeah.
In a mosque, or, what are we doing to each other? And to protest yesterday, I think that should have been out of respect.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melanie. That was a protest against what happened to Greta Thunberg, partly, who tried to deliver aid to Gaza and was stopped. Let's speak to Rafi Bloom, who's from the Federation of Jewish Services, a charity serving the Jewish community in Greater Manchester. And actually, Rafi, you were on your way to the synagogue itself when this happened.
I was, and I'm also a board member of the Jewish Representative Council of Greater Manchester Community, so that's the body that represents Manchester Jews and the wider region. And I was on my way there. It's my synagogue. The rabbi is a good friend of mine. I had a phone call from another friend who volunteers for the Community Security Trust to tell me stay away, tell my wife, my children, my grandchildren to stay away. And actually, my son-in-law was due to do that volunteer security shift at that time, but his wife persuaded him to do a later one because the children were off school. But if I may, Jeremy, I think you've had some interesting points on there from the panel and callers. I think it's important to state that for the last 2 years, the Jewish community has faced a tsunami of Jew hatred. We've had physical attacks, online abuse, vandalism, mistreatment in the NHS by documented cases of medics wearing Free Palestine badges. Our Jewish students on campus have been intimidated. We've had to undergo purity tests in workplaces and creative spaces to say whether we're a Zionist or not. And if we are, we're booted out. If we're not, we're let in. And the hate marches that take place every week on our streets. I have nothing against people supporting the Palestinian cause or Palestinians, But when these marches take place every week and they make our city centres no-go zones for Jews, and they have placards being carried in them comparing Israelis to Nazis or the Prime Minister of Israel to Adolf Hitler, and they are chanting, "Globalise the Intifada," which is what we see on a regular basis. Well, yesterday, "Globalise the Intifada" came to my synagogue, Heaton Park Synagogue, and resulted in 2 Jews being murdered. And it's all very well for the Prime Minister to say we're going to put more money into physical resources. Great. Unless you tackle the extremism and the hate that happens at these events and happens in our hospitals and on our campuses, this will happen again and again. And the Jewish community have known this was going to happen for 2 years.
Albie.
Rafi, what action do you want to be taken? We had James Max on earlier talking about he wanted action to be taken on people to understand anti-Semitism better and then action to prevent this sort of thing happening. What concrete steps would you like the government to take to stop this from happening again?
Well, I'll give you one example. At the moment, there's a doctor who's under investigation for the most vicious anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial. One of the things that she's tweeted is that the Royal Free Hospital in London is a cesspit of Jewish supremacy. Now, what Jewish patient is going to feel comfortable being treated by her when this is her views, public views? Why isn't she fired? Why isn't she at the very least suspended? So our disciplinary procedures for medics engaging in this sort of vicious Jew hatred are not fit for purpose. If our police officers see somebody carrying a placard with Holocaust denial or Holocaust inversion or Holocaust distortion or anti-Semitism at the march, lift them, take them out, but they won't because they're scared of the reaction. If they see the chance of globalise the Intifada, or another chant that we hear all the time, which is Chayba Chayba Al Yahud, which is an ancient Muslim battle cry to murder Jews. This is what caused yesterday to happen because these things have been let go unchecked for 2 years. So the police need the powers, absolutely. But the politicians need to give them the tools, and they've been too weak to do so for whatever reason for 2 years.
What reason do you think it is, Rafi, that they're not taking this more seriously and taking the steps that you want to see taken?
Well, I think they're scared. They're scared of the response. They're scared of being seen to be taking one side or another. But we've been talking about this. You know, our students on campus have been intimidated for 2 years. Anytime they show any amount of support for Israel, you know, they're attacked. And I don't know whether viewers of the show know this, Jeremy, but every single synagogue, every Jewish school, every Jewish communal organisation requires 24-hour security and big fences around it. We're the only faith community in the UK that requires that. And the fact that that's the case is a sad sad indictment of the state of affairs in the UK today.
I hear you. I feel again, I come back to events in the Middle East, Rafi, because it's at the very least must be feeding this hatred. And the question is whether you say no. So tell me, do you think this would happen anyway?
No, I take issue with the fact that we make an excuse. We give people a free pass by saying events in the Middle East must encourage people to do this, or they must make people do this. No, we can all have an opinion on what goes on in the Middle East. And I extend a hand, and our organisation extends a hand of friendship to the Muslim community to sit down. We must learn how to discuss our differences over the Middle East civilly and responsibly, but peacefully. And we must learn to hear each other with empathy. But there is no excuse whatsoever for targeting the Jewish community here over events that go on in the Middle East. If you flip Jew and Israel with Muslim and ISIS, the world would be up in arms. But when that is visited upon the Jewish community here, well, it must be the Israeli government's fault. Well, if Israel only did this or Israel only did that. Sorry, if you target Jews because of the actions of a state 2,500 miles away, no matter whether the Jewish community is broadly supportive of that state or not, you are a Jew hater, you are a racist, and there is no excuse for it.
Thank you very much indeed, Rafi Bloom. Angela in Derbyshire, what do you think of what you just heard? Very powerful words from Rafi.
Absolutely, very, very powerful. I do think that it's more, for me personally, I see a lot of it online through YouTube, live streams and stuff. And I see a lot of it is very much against Islam and Muslims. And I do feel that is, I don't know, people that have the same views do generally stick together online, and it's like they're validating themselves by being around them, same people. And they're not afraid now to say all the all the racist things on both sides, do you know? And I think it starts like with the immigration, then with the Islam, and then you're going to have a retaliation. And what's absolutely happened now is absolutely abhorrent. It should never happen. But it then links to the whole Gaza and Israel thing. And the Jewish people have nothing to do with obviously, of course they do with Israel, but like, do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, I understand. Well, it's this thing we've learned that you can't say that because a person is Jewish, they've got anything to do with the state of Israel. That's the first key thing, isn't it? You can't say a British Jewish person is in any way responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. I guess it's complicated in that the state of Israel is really unusual in that it's almost a religious, has almost an ethnic identity, and that's what complicates it.
I think that, and it's the conflation of issues, and we all have such a heightened voice. Again, I bring it back to social media, but what Angela's saying is she is seeing, groups of, words, views come together, and that's what it's doing, and it's fueling hatred.
But we've got to remember anti-Semitism is also one of the oldest forms of hate. It's been around in this country for centuries, and I worry that if we just talk about social media and we just talk about Israel and Palestine, it's almost a fig leaf on what is actually a problem that has been going on for decades. Jewish institutions have had to have security, bomb-proof glass, bulletproof glass for decades. This predates October 7th, so I don't just want us to think if we sort out the Middle East issue, all of a sudden anti-Semitism will be gone.
Good point. And thanks. We'll make that the last word on this subject, and we'll move on. But Storm will